Good morning. You are on DeProgram with Ted Rall and Jamarl Thomas. It is Monday, August 3rd, 2026, which means because of climate change, there's only 9 months left of summer. So enjoy them. So we have a lot to talk about. A lot of stuff happened over the weekend. Thank you for joining us. We'll hopefully deprogram you, to coin a phrase, from all the crap from corporate media that you've been absorbing over the course of your lifetimes and possibly over the weekend as well. There's been an increasing number of attacks by Israeli Jews in Israel against Christians, including Armenians and other American Christians visiting Israel. So we'll talk about the political implications and the meaning of all that. Donald Trump's latest polls have him as the second most unpopular president at this stage of his presidency since in the history of polling, which goes back to the 1940s. He's at 32% in Quinnipiac, which tends to be one of the more reliable polls, 33% in the AP-NORC, 34% at CNN. That's catastrophic. He's used to have a 37% floor. The floor seems to have fallen out. The only president who has ever had worse ratings at this stage in their presidency was Richard Nixon, and it's August 3rd, and he resigned on August, 6th, I think it was, or 9th, somewhere like that. He was just days away from resigning the presidency of the United States. So I guess he can take some very small presence in that. Last and not least, America and its allies are running out of bombs, which makes me giggle and makes me wonder where the fuck our money is going. Zelensky basically took a huge hit from the Russians over the weekend. Kyiv got slammed by Russian missiles. At least 9 Ukrainians were killed, more than 30 injured, according to Zelensky. Zelensky said that they couldn't fire at them because they've completely run out of air defense interceptors, a problem that couldn't be resolved for many months or maybe even a year or more. Meanwhile, the top U.S. general in Europe told the Pentagon that they no longer have enough naval resources to continue to protect Israel from incoming ballistic missiles. Boo-hoo! So hashtag sad. Okay, so that's it. If you have comments, questions, whatever, please put them in the live chat. We'll get to them on Rumble and YouTube. We appreciate it. Always priority goes to the Rumble rants and the super chats. If you're watching at some other time or listening at some other time, we appreciate your support and thank you for that. Okay, so all right, by the way, we are here Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Got to remind you of that. Q&A shows are Monday and Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern. That means because today is Monday, we are going to do a Q&A show at 12 noon. So if you'd like to come in and ask us anything you want, you can do that. Okay. All right. Enough of that. JT, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing okay. I can't complain.
Cool.
It's Monday, but otherwise I'm okay.
Indeed. All right. What would you like to discuss first?
Let's start with the running out of missiles thing, since that's where you ended. That is a fascinating. Okay, and I guess that falls within the context of the greatest strikes between Israel and the U.S. since the Second World War that Donald Trump was supposedly going to go with over the weekend,
right,
that never materialized. Donald Trump claims that the Middle Eastern countries, basically the GCC states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, in addition to Iran, contacted him and effectively begged him not to do the strikes. And so he's decided to hold off on the strikes, but he is locked and loaded. This is nonsense. The entire premise and edifice that he's created is nonsense. Iran is not negotiating with Trump in this sense. Iran is negotiating with the Omanis. Mm-hmm. And they are negotiating over the Strait of Hormuz and control of the Strait of Hormuz. Mm-hmm. The United States have been trying to peel Oman away from Iran within the context of these negotiations and effectively be a spoiler in any negotiation between the two. Mm-hmm. But that may or may not necessarily work, considering Iran has demonstrated its ability to effectively destroy the infrastructure of the Middle East if they eat their Wheaties and if they need to do so. So this statement by Trump is nonsense. And the reality of it is, as I keep saying, the U.S. has limits. People keep acting like Trump is some kind of super wild card. On some level he is, but he has limits. He's demonstrated them limits multiple times. Signing the MOU was a recognition of a limit. when he was going to give those weapons over to Ukraine, supposedly, they were going to basically long-range strikes on Moscow with missile systems. What did Trump do? He immediately went into this idea that, well, we're going to Alaska summit, so we don't need to necessarily take this policy. It was a dodge from a policy that he knew would have been utterly disastrous. This, again, recognizes a limit. If you go with strikes like that, what happens when Iran responds? And they already told you what was going to happen. Water, desalinization, oil fields, all of those things will be fundamentally destroyed if that is indeed what you're going to do. So Trump found a way out by effectively lying. And so I guess my point is, long story short, the guy pointing out that the United States does have enough in order to defend Israel, enough destroyers, I think he said he would have to make a choice between defending American interests and Israeli interests, which is an amazing statement to make considering you're an American soldier. There's that. But they've been saying that they've been running out of air defense. They've been running out of standoff munitions. Even before the 40-day war ended, the U.S. was half on all of those things. And keep in mind, the U.S. is fighting multiple wars. So it's interesting. It's interesting. But this is weakness. This is not, call it what it is. It's weakness.
I mean, a lot of this is the fact that the Iranians are using $35,000 drones to shoot down $4 million missiles, right? So
Yes.
This, the nature of warfare has changed, and the whole military-industrial grift is not working for us to even, we can't. I have shades of 9/11, right? 9/11. We only had 12 Air Force National Guard planes on the ground to defend the entire airspace of the contiguous lower 48 states. And that seemed to me like, for a country that spends this much on defense, that seems ridiculous. Like, okay, we can't have healthcare and we can't send our kids to college, but surely we should be able to bomb and kill with the best of them for the money that we're spending. And we can't. And here we go again, right? Now, I mean, obviously, we have been supplying the Ukrainians and the Israelis with a ridiculous amount of ordnance, but still, you would just think that with our industrial capacity and the amount of money we spend, and now with $1.5 trillion defense budget, waiting approval on the Hill for this coming year, that this of all things should never be an issue. But we are literally in a state now where I'm not sure that if something that hasn't happened since 1812 happened, and that the United States was actually attacked by a nation state with missiles, I'm not sure that we could actually properly defend ourselves. We didn't on 9/11. I don't, it's insane on so many levels. I mean, Jamarl, you're totally right about the having to make a decision between the U.S. and Israel. That shouldn't have to be a decision. That should just be an obvious call. And the other thing is, okay, you're right also about Trump having he likes to think that he's a wild card. But if you have any pattern recognition abilities whatsoever, you can see this guy does the same thing every time. In fact, he even does it on a schedule, right? Like Friday night is always like, I'm going to destroy you, end your civilization, rain hot death upon you and your people. And then Saturday, that doesn't happen. And then on Sunday, it's like he announces that peace talks are underway. There are no peace talks underway. The Washington Post and the New York Times both reported over the weekend that there's two Iranian officials who spoke to them anonymously. Anonymously. Basically told them that it kind of confirmed exactly what you said, that they have a scaled escalation strategy that was worked out back in like February through April, where basically it was like, okay, they have like a Excel spreadsheet. Like if the Americans or the Israelis do this, then our response will be that. And it's they don't even have to really think that much about it because they know they don't escalate themselves, but they respond to every escalation with a measured response. And I mean, and that's really frustrating to Trump because Trump thinks if I just hit them one more time, they'll submit. But then the opposite happens. All that happens is something that the U.S. cares about gets hit, so it's it's a no-win situation. And if the man had any sanity and he wasn't starting to suffer from if he wasn't suffering from dementia of some sort, he would just say, look, this is a losing game. I've got to just admit it. at least internally, and then bring it in for a landing. I mean, we all know this is like, during the Vietnam War, people knew by 1971 or 72 that this war was going to come to an end and that the U.S. was going to have to withdraw, but we still had to keep fucking around with it for a few more years. This is like that. I mean, we know where this is going. I mean, you don't have to be a military expert. And, that we're going to, that basically, Marco Rubio's schemes to run oil around the Strait of Hormuz is across, using pipelines across Saudi Arabia. That can't work because of the Houthis.
Right.
And not to mention, drones change everything. Hilariously, I got to turn the mic back over to you, but hilariously to me, the mics, the drone thing, that's the Americans who weaponized drones, right? Like, we created modern drone warfare. We could have gotten the lead, had the entire world sign off on an international convention to ban drones, drone warfare. Most of the world would have agreed to it at the time, I think. I think they would.
I don't think so. I don't think you can come out with a weapon system like that. And I mean, for one, it's kind of like the airplane, where if initially they didn't realize the significance of the airplane in regards to modern warfighting, it took a while for them to realize it. And the US's drones, the Reaper drones and those type of things, I don't think they hadn't gotten to the point that they were in the war with Ukraine and Russia, meaning Russia and Ukraine effectively set the playbook for modern drone warfare and the deadly nature of that warfare.
Going back to 2001, 2002, when Bush gave them to the CIA and announced to the world that they were only going to be used for surveillance, and that they'd never be used for weapons as weapons. But within 6 to 12 months, of course, the CIA was using them to assassinate people. Yeah. I mean, anyway, my point is that this is a thing that we were in the lead for. We've opened Pandora's box, and now asymmetric warfare is now to the advantage of all our adversaries who we've picked fights with.
Yes. Yeah. Well, drones are obviously cheaper. They're flying killer robots, so they don't require airplanes. And I get the sense that the missiles that we used to use for air defense were meant for missiles, not drones. Meaning nobody postulated firing, a $5 million missile at a $30,000 drone, right?
Nope.
And for that to make sense in regards to math in the context of a war. Meaning if you're doing that, your production of it is not necessarily up to snuff. We don't have the industrial base that we had back in the 50s and 60s or the 40s when we were fighting the Second World War. It's a fundamentally different country. We seem to organize our military around going after small, short, kinetic instances, believing that nobody is going to fight a war with us. There's something else you said. Look, from my point of view, I don't want to take out the fact that we're in a capitalistic system. And the reason why I say that is we don't get things for their value. We get things in real life. There's use value, meaning I'm using a computer because I need it to stream. Okay, that computer has a use value to me. It's invaluable in the context of its usage. But when we're buying weapons, I don't know if they're looking at it in those terms. I think they're looking at it from the point of the person who's selling it as a business expense, meaning the U.S. bought X amount of billions of missiles from me. Are they effective to do what we need them to do? Maybe. Ideally, hopefully these things dovetail, but they don't need to dovetail. Meaning the fact that we spend $1 trillion a year on our military is often used as a deterrence in and of itself. Look how much money the U.S. spends on this military. But we don't necessarily have a real world correlation between the amount of money that you spend versus the effectiveness of that military to accomplish the objective you want to accomplish. Those are very different things. It's a business expense from the standpoint of the companies that are selling the weapons. The U.S. trying to use them and not necessarily being effective against Iran. Okay, that's a whole different matter. Meaning, I think these things correlate to one another. Just because you spend a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean you get the bang for your buck militarily for the money that you spend. And we see that $1 trillion number, and I think we're looking at it as a use value issue when it's a capitalistic issue, not use value. I hope that makes sense.
Right. Well, Cyndi Lauper saying that money changes everything, but not always. I mean, as is being discovered by Haley Stevens in Michigan.
Yes.
She, who is currently, I mean, it's really funny. Like she starts to do better. She accepts $30 to $60 million in APAC money,
That's
and that kills her. And now
that is
Saeed
astonishing.
that election is tomorrow. Saeed's going to win, right? I mean, I didn't say this a week ago because that wasn't going to be true a week ago. But APAC killed her candidacy. And Saeed, I mean, is ahead by 16 points. I mean, I don't see how he loses.
That is amazing.
I
mean, hey, I'm not. I hope he wins. I'm not putting my eggs into.
Oh, me neither.
Yeah, but I'm hoping he wins.
Me too.
But if he wins, whoo, can you imagine burning $60 million on the White House lawn? And the fact that you burned the money on the White House line is the thing that might have been the dagger in your campaign.
Well, I wonder what APAC will do if they, let's just say they, I mean, I'm beginning to see this is starting to become a pattern, right? I mean, we saw it with Mamdani. I mean, what happens if APAC learns sort of hey, your money's no good here anymore? Then what do they do? Do they have any other plays? I mean, they certainly, accusing everyone who criticizes Israel of being anti-Semitic no longer has any traction at all. So they don't, if the money doesn't work, then and the propaganda doesn't work, I don't know, what are they going to just do? Start shooting candidates they don't like?
This is the advantage. Oh, go ahead, JT.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say they're going to push the money through different circuits.
I don't think that
label won't be on it.
Yeah, I think they'll probably. I think they're going to do that, but I think that this shows a huge advantage that the populist left has over the populist right. You don't have as many religious dispensational Israel first lunatics in the Democratic Party as we have in the Republican Party. That's why. And that is a huge advantage that y'all side of the aisle has. I hope they shall capitalize on it and push it and push it and push it. Because if Massey wasn't a Democrat, odds are what happened in Kentucky would be what's happening in Michigan right now. The problem is that so many Republicans, especially Republican boomers, are so wrapped up in this whole idea that if you do not bless Israel, then God is going to curse and destroy America. First, just look around. We're already under the judgment of God. We're not being blessed. And second, if that's your theological touchstone that you must bless those people that actively hate you, then you're going to have, that's going to be a much harder political fight to have. I hope to God the Democrats just keep on knifing AIPAC. Y'all keep going it. Y'all keep doing it.
I mean, the DSA now has over 120,000 members. They have more members than Eugene Debs' Socialist Party had at its peak back 100 years ago. I mean, before we move on to whatever we move on to, one thing that I think DSA is going to have to address, because they are and I'm talking about them because they are the force where all the energy is inside the Democratic Party is now. They're going to have to address the age thing. I mean, when you look at photos of the recent DSA confab that they had, there's no one over 40. And the thing is, there's lots of good lefties, like my age or older. They're going to, if they want to keep growing, it can't be a Gen Z or millennial phenomenon.
But they're not trying to do that, are they? I mean, I think that's just the way it happened. I mean, are they intentionally trying to keep the age low?
No, I don't think it's intentional, but there are ways to do. I mean, that's sort of just what's happened. And if you want to, it's just like anything. If you have I was part of the founding of a magazine called POV, and we sat around and we were all at a bar on 23rd Street, and we were all looked around the table, and all as founders, there were 10 of us, and one of us said, "Guys, notice anything?" And we all started laughing because we're all white guys of a certain age, and we're yeah, we're gonna have to reach out to some friends and get different people who don't look like us, right? Otherwise this magazine is gonna suck. It's gonna be boring. It wasn't about being woke. It was just we wanted to be good. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of what DSA should be. All organizations that find themselves with a certain, monochrome demographic, they have to look around and say we can do better. We need to reach out if we want to keep growing.
No, I agree with you. I mean, if that's the way it's breaking down, no, I agree with you. But look, from their point of view, this is the hopefulness of youth, right? We can take over the ship. We can change the party from within. We can do it.
Yeah, for now, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't change it. Keep on keeping on. You guys are doing great.
Yeah, they haven't hit the grim reality of the system mechanism that they're going to have to deal with if they
They're in
really
the
want to
cycle
change
right
the system.
now. They shouldn't be worried like my criticisms or anyone else's until after the election. Then they need to like think about that stuff.
Yeah, then that stuff gets very real. I mean, once you start beating these candidates, I mean, it gets very real. Robbie says epic shit at times. He said the judgment of God. And I was like, whoa, that's so heavy.
It is.
But he has a point, right? Like, I think this country is going to go through perdition. Yeah. And it's going to be from things that we do. And they don't necessarily seem to be taking that stuff into consideration in the way that it affects people in everyday life. I mean, Trump doesn't seem to care that oil prices are going up. He doesn't seem to care that food prices are going up. He doesn't seem to care that people, like 60, 70% say they can't afford their life. Like, those are big things. Those are not minor things. And I guess my point is that these candidates in the Democratic Party or the DSA are on some level lightning in the bottle to that reality, considering the message that they are putting out, especially if that message works and is real. So I suppose we'll see. But no, Lord knows, I hope he wins. And, you know, there is a question of what does it mean that the Democratic Party's, let's say, approval is a death nail? Like, meaning that approval is not a benefit. That approval is
it hurts you.
Albatross. Yeah.
She was doing better without them. She was doing. She was going to win if she had literally told. I mean, imagine. By the way, you roll back. Imagine if, like a week ago, she said she released an ad and said, you know, I got a call from James Clyburn the other day. I got a call from Nancy Pelosi, and they said they wanted to help me win. I got a call from APAC. They wanted to give me tens of millions of dollars, but I told them no. I want to win the honest way. I want to win with the people of Michigan. Either they vote for me, either they like my policies or they don't. And I said no, and I'm independent, and I'll never belong to anyone other than the citizens of Michigan. Oh shit, Saeed would be in trouble. I mean, I heard him on the New Yorker radio hour over the weekend being interviewed, and he said that he was literally saying like, "Oh my God, thank God for APAC." Like, they're really
thank God.
I was thinking like, okay, you're kind of just saying that, right, to be funny.
No, he means
it's really true.
He means it. Thank God they put the scarlet letter on my opponent. Thank God they gave her all of this money with this albatross. Thank God. And hopefully they publicize it that they gave her money. Like, meaning I want them to put ads everywhere that we gave her money.
Yeah. Big Israeli flags, like, oh my God.
Just go with balls out. And by the way, the Mamdani thing is the same thing. If the Democratic Party just said, if Mamdani wins, we'll back him, he might have lost that race.
Yeah, like, that's true.
It's the friction.
I gotta tell you, like, everybody I know, there were these racist Bloomberg, those mailers, these like postcards, oversized postcards that everybody gets at election time, and paid for by Michael Bloomberg, right? And they literally did to Mamdani what Time Magazine did to OJ, where they darkened his skin on the cover. They darkened Mamdani's skin on the photo, and it was like, whoa! And it was so racist, and people got those cards and literally were like, yeah, I've got to vote for this guy.
Yeah. like now, the catch with Mamdani though, he has to be successful. That's the key point.
True.
Meaning, if he goes in and fails, that does the left no favor.
He's definitely, at this point, I would say, he's only been in office for 8 months. So, but I don't think that you can say, he certainly hasn't, he's not going to fail. The question, I think now the point is, because he's obviously competent and very energetic, and he's got good people around him, but he's definitely got to succeed now. He's got to exceed expectations. It's hard. The mayoralty of the city of New York is not an easy gig, so... We'll see. All right, we got some comments and we got to talk about other stuff. All right, FU says, so some dude in Idaho was extremely upset about his double order. Yeah, the In-N-Out shooter in Idaho, right? And then,
right. Yeah. And he says double order?
I don't know. See, I have to admit, I've only eaten at In-N-Out once or twice, and I do understand the hype, but I'm not familiar with all the lexicon. I'm more of a Wendy's man. I'm a Dave's Double man. But yeah,
Dave's Double. Yeah, I don't know anything about In-N-Out. I've never been. I did see the shooting kind of out of the side of my eye.
Yeah,
But
I
I don't
mean,
know the
and
reason.
I guess the other thing is that a good guy with a gun helped bring it to a conclusion, right? Like a dude came in and intervened and apparently brought things
Oh,
to
did
an
he?
earlier conclusion.
Yeah, he was just a
Did he
normal
shoot
guy.
he shot
Uh,
the guy with the gun?
He did. Listen, if you're gonna play those kind of games in Montana, Idaho, parts of Colorado, you got to realize there's sheepdogs in there with the sheep. And if you go out there, you start trying to take out some of the sheep. There's a solid chance that some sheepdog is going to ventilate you instead. So if you're going to do that stuff, go to a more populous, more tolerant Eastern state. You'll have a easier time.
A better chance.
Yeah.
Did he do the Samuel Jackson thing? And God, something, I forget the line before you.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
although this guy didn't give a shit. He was a former disgruntled employee kind of thing. So,
was he? Okay.
You've got it.
I was at my company once. I remember one of the guys at the company got into a big argument with management. Management fired him. The guy came back and trashed the entirety of the office, with the exception of black people in the office. So my desk was perfectly fine.
Wow.
I forgot why.
That's so great. Membership has its privileges.
Membership has its privileges. I knew the guy, right? So I had, at the very least, a passing relationship with the guy, and I was on good terms with him. But it was something with the way that they did him. They did him wrong, and he flipped out.
That's like Columbine shootings, right? I mean, I don't remember if it was Dylan Klebold or Eric Harris, but one of them saw some kids who had been nice to them and said, like, you guys go. You're cool.
Yeah. He was like, we're not going to touch the desk. And then somebody was like, why didn't you mess your desk up? Oh, no. Who knows? Who knows?
So I don't know about this. Robbie, you can help me with this. Distinguished Turtle. Is that Mitch McConnell? Is that you? Remember the unique commenters reset because of the beginning of the month on Rumble.
Yep, that is correct.
That
new
mean?
month, so new metrics. That means you got to hit the watch hour goals. We got to hit the unique chatter goals again every month. We have to do that. And
by the way, it's just a reminder to everybody. We need everybody to still help out with Robbie. Since it is the beginning of the month, please go to his gaming channel on Rumble called Putinbot Gaming, one word, and go and stream his games. You don't have to be present or paying or babysitting your computer. Just to get up, turn it on, put it for like 7 hours and go. Just overnight, whatever.
Yeah, just click a playlist, let that puppy go. And if y'all see me go live whenever I stream, come drop a poop emoji, call me a Nazi. It doesn't really matter. I just need the unique chatter. So seriously, it will help out a lot. Earnings from Rumble have not posted yet this month. With any luck, it will at least break even with the paying for Wild Loss of John. And if so, y'all could keep your favorite right winger. If not, the show will be down a producer because I have to go work someplace else.
That would be bad and unfair.
That would be unfortunate.
Marsden, just inject the naval destroyers with more testosterone.
I know, right? The testosterone didn't help. They couldn't. The triumph
war fighters.
Yeah, our war fighters. God, I hate that. That's so war fighters.
Mr. Boston says, never mind defending. If someone invaded America, we have enough guns for every American citizen to have at least 35. And when it comes to drones, the same can be applied. Yeah, but those guns are all unevenly distributed, right? We're not like Switzerland, where every citizen is required to keep guns in their home in order to defend the homeland, right? Like we don't do that, right? So in places like New York City, nobody's got guns, and like places like Montana, everybody's got like 100. So, we need, along with socialist redistribution of wealth, we need redistribution of weapons. Manchild, thanks for the $1. Do you happen to see the human gas station hot dog, RFK Jr., reverse his position on vaccines over the weekend?
Did he?
I missed that.
What did he say?
I don't know.
Because let's be clear, RFK Jr. wasn't. I never took him as a vaccine denier.
He wasn't. He even said that he and his family had been vaccinated.
Yeah, I just took it as he's like, look, I have questions about the medical efficacy of these because they're not being tested in the way that other drugs are tested, which is true. Mm-hmm. Like meaning he didn't necessarily go with the vaccine skeptic stuff, even though that's the way he was continuously hit with. He seemed to just be like, these should be tested in the
He was
same way.
open to he was open to the questions, particularly related to the questions by parents of autistic children as to
Yes.
whether or not there's a tie, right? I mean, and look, here's the thing. I mean, as someone who was in engineering school and believes in the scientific method, I mean, I always get really skeptical when someone says, "Oh, we don't have to test," or "We tested, but we're not going to release it publicly."
Agreed.
Like, fuck you. Like,
Yeah, agreed.
transparency. You want us to inject this with a pointy needle into our bloodstreams? Like, no. You've got to prove it.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, like the fact that he was asking the question to them seemed outlandish in and of itself. To which I thought it was outlandish that they thought it was outlandish.
His questions were completely reasonable.
They were completely reasonable, completely valid. And if your vaccine could stand up to scrutiny, I mean, they're like, well, you shouldn't even scrutinize it. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. For one, as somebody who has had to deal with the medical profession for a very long time, they are often full of shit.
Yes.
Right out.
And Jamarl, like, trust the science, Jamarl. It's like, well, trusting science is inquiring on things, right? I mean, like,
right.
Don't take anything for granted.
I shouldn't have to trust anything. People have to trust in God and science. You prove it through the scientific method. Yeah. And there should be this idea of, okay, well, if this thing actually works, and if this thing is not actually causing harm, then what is your issue with testing that thing? And I suspect the issue with testing it was that it may be causing harm in some way that they don't necessarily want to touch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like his questions were reasonable, and they were acting like he was a maniac for asking the questions. Totally. No, it's very possible that there's a reason that they don't test vaccines in the way that other drugs are tested. Mm-hmm. And if RFK is bringing that up, that's more of a reason to make that test. Like, meaning the screaming about it is more of a reason to do it. Parents are perfectly right in saying, I think something is wrong with my kid and I think it's related to the vaccine. That doesn't make them wrong for them.
They have look, I mean, the thing is, they may be mistaken about the cause. They might be right about the cause. But in my view, when millions of Americans have a question about something as serious as this, they deserve to have some of their tax dollars dedicated to assuaging those doubts.
Agreed. I'm very curious what RFK say about vaccines that made the audience think that.
Anna Mandarake, as expected, it was Israel and the U.S. behind the Spanish enclave migrant issue.
Yes.
Moroccan king's advisor is Jewish. They named a highway after Trump in Morocco. Israel is bragging about it.
Yep.
So
we talked about this on Friday, and I pointed out Morandi's comment about this is Israel. He hit it immediately.
Yeah. So
this is U.S. and Israel punishing Spain.
I mean, I'm sorry, I missed this. So please elucidate. Like, how is it? What's the connection between Israel and the migrant thing?
So apparently, the Moroccan king is firmly on the side of the U.S. and Israel, and as the person just pointed out, Trump named the road after him. Spain was very vocal about going after Israel for genocide. This is Israel's way of trying to punish Spain using the immigrants as a way of doing so.
How did they do that?
What do you mean?
How did Israel, gin up a 60,000 person migrant flow?
Well, Israel didn't need to necessarily directly do it. You only needed the connection between Israel and the king of Morocco that wanted to effectively punish Spain for the things it was saying. This is kind of like South Africa, right? Like, you could say, well, how did Israel go after South Africa? They went after South Africa through Trump, with Trump passing sanctions against them for going after Israel in the International Criminal Court. You could say, well, how is Israel going after the International Criminal Court? Well, it's obviously Israel that's not doing it because it's a country of 8 million people. It's Trump that's doing it at their behest.
Right.
I'm saying this is the same thing. The king didn't bring up trucks and whatnot just for shits and giggles. He did so as a way of punishing Spain. Israel, in this case, was pissed off that Spain was being very vocal about the fact that Israel was committing a genocide, and this was the way of punishing Spain for doing so. Donald Trump is the...
If I were Spain, I would at least recall my ambassador from Tel Aviv and maybe sever diplomatic ties.
Yeah. I mean, Israel and the U.S. were...
People died as a result of this bullshit.
Yeah, Israel and the U.S. were bragging about it.
Yeah.
And they were bragging about it pretty early.
They killed
most of the migrants, by the way, were sent back. Well, most of them were sent back. I mean, it was like tens of thousands.
Like 50 died, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a lot of ways, kind of in the peak of the migrant crisis, when the Mexican train companies were just like migrants up to the train, just driving them up to Brownsville, letting them off. It's very similar to that. And I can't confirm this, but I've seen reports saying that a lot of the migrants are told that the border is now open. Go on in, we'll help you get there. Go kind of like what the Turks were kind of doing with the Greeks, and definitely what Mexico was doing with the migrants, just shipping everyone up here under Biden. So here going in, just go ahead and go on just hit the beach. The Spanish will welcome you with open arms, no problems at all. Then you go to Europe and enjoy that, and then suck on that sweet welfare tit, and have a great life.
Yep.
And the Spanish were not having it. Thank God for Spain.
And by the way, the Turks used to do the same thing in Europe. That's why Europe was effectively giving Turkey money in order to hold the Syrian migrants.
Right. Good point. We have a $1 donation from P.W. Walker. Hope you cover Count Binface's, this is in the UK, by-election before next week. It's wild. We will. I promise.
Wait, say it one more time. Read that
Count
one more time.
Binface. You remember Count Binface, the trash can guy? The trash can candidate?
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
He's running. That's hilarious.
Yeah, we'll get to it because it's more like a later in the week story.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd vote for Trash Can Man.
Oh, of course. I mean, at least he's useful. John D. Cockerfeller, AIPAC's already changing course. They've already started putting out money through different sources. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
All right, Tara O. I'm afraid Ted may be right. AIPAC may start putting out contracts on the candidates that they despise. I wouldn't put it past them.
They're murderers.
Philly's Fob, thanks for the $1. Private weapons manufacture is like private healthcare. A customer cured is a customer lost, and a soldier surviving is a lost sale of kit for his replacement. Also, like incremental computing advances. That's profound. Yeah, that's true. It's like how we say, like the Cancer Society would hate it if cancer were cured.
Yeah, right. All of them lose their jobs, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's no profit in the cure. There's a profit in the continuation.
John D. Cockerfeller, in fairness to the DSA, they don't want the guidance of the older folks, and I don't blame them. Many of the ills they're raging against are directly caused by or fail to be prevented by the boomers. Well, first of all, there are older folks who are not boomers. Hello, Generation X. But I don't think it's about like seeking guidance. I think it's about like, growing and like, working together. I mean, obviously.
And understanding the concerns of that group.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's something to that also. I agree with you. I think they should have a good slice of America in their organization, just to understand what's going on in those groups. I mean, keep in mind, when Sanders was running, he had a weakness big time in African-American community.
Correct.
And that weakness that did not help him all that well, considering it was Clyburn in South Carolina that was able to marshal that community, put a knife in Sanders' campaign.
Yeah. I still find it really, considering that, Sanders was arrested, as a young man in the civil rights movement, he of all people should have known better. I spent too much time in Vermont, I guess.
He was there with King. When King was giving the same speech, Sanders was sitting in the audience, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And yet, Joe Biden was the one that was able to effectively wedge the black community. God, man, you have no idea how much that angers me.
Joe Biden, who built his entire career on supporting opposition to court-ordered busing, right?
Yeah, Strom Thurmond. He was a friend to Strom Thurmond. If I'm not mistaken, spoke at his funeral.
Yeah.
So it frustrates me, right? And I agree with you. If they have weaknesses in various demographics, they should fix those weaknesses.
Yeah. I mean, like I have to say, like right now, everybody I know is worried about Social Security. If you're younger, you should be more worried. And basically, they say they're going to run out by 2032. And my benefits, if I ever get them, will be cut by about a quarter. You want people like me to vote DSA. I mean, I'll vote DSA anyway. But my friends, you guys need to say something about Social Security, right?
Yeah, it's a big deal. Especially since the Trump administration is probably going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or try to privatize it. I mean, hell, Bill Clinton was even trying to privatize it. Thanks God for Lewinsky.
Okay, so let's talk about our main story. Basically, the optics of this are super interesting. So 6 people were arrested, Israeli Jews were arrested for spitting and throwing rocks at the Armenian Cathedral of St. James. That's in the old city of Jerusalem. If you visit there, you will have seen it. 5 of these were under 18. 1 was an adult. They threw rocks at the window of an Armenian woman who was using her phone to film the event. And they shouted at her, "Get back inside, you daughter of a whore." Talk about retro type yelling. So anyway, there's been a lot of incidents. of Christians reporting that they've been assaulted, not just Armenian Christians, but American Christians who visit Bethlehem or whatever. And so this is, I mean, obviously this reflects the rise of Jewish supremacists in Israel. And I think, to me, what it really reflects is there's always a big gap for a politician like Netanyahu or Trump or anyone, between what they have to say for domestic consumption to maintain political control and what they have to communicate to the outside world. But in this case, Netanyahu's got a gap that I don't think he can resolve. His entire political base of support is these right-wing Jewish nationalist parties who encourage people like this and who, for the most part, rarely get apprehended. The police have very little interest in going after them because they're probably sympathetic to them. The West Bank, there's the West Bank settler attacks, terrorist attacks against, and then like the Ro Khanna video. And I guess the whole thing is, you used to be able to get away with that disjunct, but you can't get away with that right now if you're Israel, because the whole world is watching. And right now, particularly right-wingers in the United States, Republicans who traditionally would have supported Israel, and many Democrats, are looking at all this, and they're wondering, whether they should continue to support Israel. I guess I really want to hear what Robbie has to say here, but, like a lot of Christians in the United States who support Israel this is to me like a huge wedge, right? Like, it's like, if we're Christians who support Israel and we go to Israel and they hate us and they throw rocks at us and spit on us, why are we supporting them? I guess would be the question I would have. And I just think it's like, the Israelis they don't give a shit about how they're being perceived, but they kind of really need to give a shit about how they're perceived because they're so dependent as basically an international welfare state on the United States. And public opinion here, which is in the toilet for them. And none of this is going to help. I mean, I don't know. Am I missing something?
No, and it's one of my major frustrations because I talked about this to some people at church yesterday. And it's the problem with dispensationalists. And for the people who don't know what dispensationalism is, just in a quick snapshot version, what it teaches is that God works in different ways in different aspects of time. And in the Old Testament, the Hebrews were the chosen people of God, which is correct, but they teach it in a different way because ultimately salvation is supposed to come from the nation of Israel and in the person of Jesus Christ, who's the fulfillment of the law. Dispensationalists believe that the Jews still have those promises, despite the fact that the New Testament over and over and over again says those promises are taken away from you. The covenant is done. It is given over to the followers of Christ who've been grafted in. That's the promise. Jews reject it. Dispensationalists, to this day, while they will admit if a Jew dies without Christ that they go to hell, they are still God's chosen people, and it is incumbent on the Christian to bless the nation state of Israel and to bless the Jewish people, realize they are a higher plane of existence than what you are because of a bloodline that they can't even trace back because their ancestors are a goat herder in Poland. But that doesn't matter. And so the mental gymnastics that they have to go through is insane. Meanwhile, the Bible, the New Testament over and over and over again says the believers in Christ are one body, we are one nation, we are a peculiar people, a peculiar priesthood set apart from what used to be. But dispensationalists say that doesn't matter. It's almost like someone has Crohn's disease, right? Your immune system attacks your body. That's how dispensationalists see it. It's just like the body of Christ, the Christians are the body of Christ, but the Jews have a part to play, kind of like Crohn's disease. They hate you. The New Testament says they are enemies of the gospel. They're enemies of, they actually said that they killed Christ because they did. And the mother of a whore.
Romans killed Christ, right?
The Jews did because
Pilate did not, right?
Pilate wanted to release him. But the Jews, not just the Pharisees, this is how they try to weasel it. They said, if you do not do this, you are not Caesar's friend. And that's tantamount to calling for a rebellion right then. So
but
they
if
forced
you
the
believe
issue.
the Bible story, which I hate to say, Robbie, is probably historically untrue, right? Pilate was not a wishy-washy dude. Pilate was a fanatic, crazy Roman like despot who they sent there because Judea was so restive. And he was like, he was sent there, crush the locals. These people are assholes, crush them ruthlessly. But Pilate,
Historically, that is completely incorrect.
the Bible story portrays Pilate as like a wishy-washy kind of like, well, okay, listen, I don't know, like a little bit of this, little bit of that. Okay, I know. Okay, you guys, what do you guys want to do? And then okay, oh, kill him. Okay, all right, I'll kill him. And he washes his hands. But even if you believe that story, it's still on him, right? Like if I say, hey, JT and Robbie, do you want me to kill Clovis? And then you're like, yeah, kill that cat. And I go kill him, but that's on me, right? You're not getting arrested. Just the internet might not like you guys, but I'm the one going to have animal control up my ass.
Okay, yeah, historically, there's a caveat to that. I mean, if Robbie brought him to you and say, hey, kill this person, and you agree to it,
yeah,
courts are going to look at you as also being culpable to the crime.
That's true. However, he was arrested by the Romans, wasn't he?
Well, he got reassigned to Gaul. So basically, from a historical context, this is why you got to read Josephus. So you got to remember the Romans had just had a major war against the Parthians maybe 20 years before. Judea was a backwater. Antioch was really where the Romans were situated at, and also in Egypt. And Egypt had only become a Roman province like 30 years before at the end of the Roman Civil War. So Judea was a backwater with a small garrison. Pilate's predecessor, who was arrested, he almost started rebellion because he wanted to bring some of the Roman eagles and put them up on the walls of Jerusalem. The Jews regarded that as an idol, started a big riot. They almost had a rebellion. So Pilate was playing it safe because he had a very small garrison. He cannot afford a revolt. Read Josephus. This isn't me making this stuff up. This is Josephus himself that wrote this stuff. So you can reject the Bible, but a Jewish historian who lived during the time probably had a good idea about what was going on. So that's the historical context. The Pharisees, the Sanhedrin as a whole, said this guy's a heretic. They were not able to crucify Christ himself.
They were the DNC of their time.
Basically, because you got to remember, because they did not have the legal authority to put someone to death. That's why he had to be taken to the Romans, and the entire court was illegal. Under Old Testament law, trials had to be held during the day. The Sanhedrin held Jesus' trial at night. He was brought to Pilate. Pilate even tried to trade Barabbas for Jesus. So, this guy is a prophet. I don't see a problem with it. Barabbas is a murderer. And the Jews are like, no, give us Barabbas instead. So they 100% push that issue.
And Barabbas is one of the two guys who's crucified next to Jesus, right?
Barabbas was set free. There was two thieves that were crucified on either side of Christ. And more to the point, I mean, without taking this all the way into Sunday school, the Bible over and over and over again says that the Jews are enemies of Christ, enemies of the gospel. And the reason why they're calling this Armenian Christian the daughter of a whore is because they teach that in the Talmud, Mary was a whore. Jesus' father was a Roman centurion named Pantera, and that he went to Egypt, learned black magic, was a sorcerer, and another name used for Jesus is called Balaam. So you don't take any of my word for this. Open a book, do some research. It's all right there.
All right. Well, it's true. We don't want to do Sunday school. But let's talk about the politics of this. I mean, look, I don't know. Netanyahu is definitely between a rock and a hard place here because he can't sick the Jewish, he can't sick the Israeli police against these like Jewish thugs who are attacking Christians. Because if he does, he'll lose too much domestic support, and he's barely hanging on by a thread. No. But on the other hand, if he doesn't, the optics internationally, and particularly here in the United States, are atrocious. So, and it's not one of those things you can wish away. I mean, this was an issue that, people like Tucker Carlson have been talking about for years, but no one gives a shit. Now the mainstream press is noticing. It's a front page story in the New York Times. It's not going away.
No, Israel needs to be held accountable. And it's going to come down to Does God's chosen people have to answer to public opinion polls?
And
because if you're God's chosen people, you don't care about opinion polls because God is literally on your side.
Eventually, they will.
And the dispensationalists, they love it because they think what's going to happen is that these crazy Jews are going to rebuild the third temple, and that's why Jesus needs to come back. Jesus is God; He does not need your help.
All right, we got a couple more things to talk about here.
Churches, I don't know if
they don't care. The dispensationalists do not care. They do not care.
Yeah, I don't think they care.
Well, they don't care. No one cares until they have to care about anything.
I guarantee you, they do not care.
All right. Speaking of which, guys, let's talk about Trump. He's got like the worst fucking polls ever. 32% is catastrophic. That's resignation level. So look, I'm going to predict that by November he may be looking at 29. It's so. It's going to be a wash. The Democrats are going to wipe the floor in the house with him in the House of Representatives. They might. I don't think they will because the numbers are hard. But they have a shot at taking back the Senate. But things are going to turn. I mean, he's projecting that he doesn't care. You and I both know he's obsessed with opinion polls because he's always been. So, what does this have any practical effect or? Did he basically know that the only thing he was ever really going to be able to pass legislatively was the big, beautiful bill? And from that point onward, everything was just going to have to be through executive order. And I guess this also makes me wonder, doesn't this increase the odds of post-electoral shenanigans to try to reverse the results of the election and declare some kind of stupid state of emergency? Iran is hacking everything or whatever, in order to basically make an excuse to say that we're going to invalidate those election results.
I think all bets are off in regards to Trump and what he may or may not do. I think those things are wild cards. I do think in that context it's a wild card, just because up to this point there's been no restraint on what Trump has been doing in the country, whether it's the ICE agents, whether it's the monetizing the presidency, any of those things. And so I don't know. I'm skeptical of it, but I don't know. I mean, the reality of it is he would have to, at some point, attack the courts. And at some point, the question is always the same. Will U.S. soldiers shoot Americans? Because that's what it always boils down to at the very end of things. Meaning, at some point, with the American public, there's a backlash against whatever Trump is doing. Do soldiers shoot Americans?
Would there be any Americans to shoot, JT? I mean, are Americans willing to go out into the streets and mix it up with the authorities in the way that they have over ICE over midterm elections? Oh, you defeated my corporate Democrat. I'm really pissed. Really?
I think they would feel some kind of way about what they consider to be choice taken away in the context of elections breaking down. Meaning, it's one thing for somebody to say,
how far would they go?
Well, it's that part. I mean, because those things tend to escalate. I mean, if the president of the U.S. takes actions to negate the elections, then it becomes very clear that your country doesn't have elections, which is a whole different context that people would have to kind of get their head around.
And I don't style.
Well, I don't think they would tolerate it easily. Meaning that's a big deal. That's not a minor thing. Like, even if you think your elections are farcical, they serve a purpose in regards to making people believe that there's choice in the country. If you take away the choice, you're back at the Matrix, right? Choice is the issue. If you take away the choice, even if the choice is minor or minimal, I think people will respond to that fact. I think there will be such a shock. I mean, keep in mind, part of the rationale that Putin doesn't necessarily go harder in Ukraine is because he doesn't want to provoke a reaction by NATO in a sense of a war. Whereas if you salami slice it, you're much better off in getting what you want without this kind of huge counter immunological reaction to it. I think the same thing is true for elections. If the president comes out and negates enough elections for his people to stay in office, I think that is not going to be taken well. I could be wrong.
It won't be taken well, I guess, for sure. But the question is, how far is the media willing to go? How far is, are the no kings people willing to go, to fight it? I'm glad you brought up Russia and Ukraine. Over the weekend, news broke that Russia's seriously contemplating mass mobilization to finally put an end to the Ukraine war. Seems like I'm highly skeptical. I wanted your take. I mean, it definitely seems like the moment is ripe for the Russians to press their advantage in terms of, hey, we didn't give away all our bombs and missiles, like on ours. We're not the ones who started a war involving 14 nations. So, I don't know why the Ukrainians would feel like they want to mix it up with the Iranians too. I mean, okay, I mean, like. Go after the Iranians who are beating the U.S. right now. Okay, doesn't seem like smart calculus.
Good idea. Yeah, I don't buy the mass mobilization thing. It may take place after the Russian elections, maybe, but Putin has been doing everything in his power to keep, let's say, the number of people that have been dying on the Russian side low, which has slowed down the pace at which Russia advances because you're trying to keep down casualties. I mean, Putin was asked this in a recent speech, and Putin said, yes, I would like to move faster. Gets a huge amount of applause. And then he points out, but I want to keep lives. I want to preserve life. He's been doing everything in his power to prevent the Russian system from changing too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, meaning from the standpoint of the economy, from the standpoint of the oligarchs. And if you mass mobilize, a lot of other things will have to change in regards to economy and everything else. But it's possible. I mean, it is very possible, especially if he's thinking he's going to have to fight a larger war against NATO. But I suppose we'll see. But I'm very skeptical of stuff coming out of the West. They want him to mass mobilize.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I'm not sure it would fail, to be honest, to put it in a weird, awkward way. I mean, there might be a lot to be said for it. It would certainly, there's certainly a sizable section of Russian society that would not have a problem with it, I think.
True.
We have some more comments. Effie said, thanks for the $1. For Zionist Christians, Jews are nothing but Jesus bait to be mass sacrificed when Jesus returns. True.
Yeah.
The Israelis know this and use it for their greater Israel plans.
Yes.
John D. Cockfeller, thanks for the $2. One religion tells us Christ is boiling in shit, and the other tells us Christ is at worst a prophet or at best the Messiah. One seems more compatible with Christianity than the other.
Yeah. It's wild. I mean, you have to question, what do they believe if they are harnessing the Zionism stuff or the Christianity stuff for their own ends? Meaning, if Christianity believes that Jesus is going to come back and effectively kill the Jews, and the Jews are saying, okay, we're going to harness this, then they obviously don't believe that Jesus is coming back to kill them off.
Right? Of course not. I mean, look, most people don't believe, I always say this, most people don't believe the stuff that they say that they believe religiously. Look, if this is, Christianity is the dominant religion in the United States. And man, if even half of people who are self-purported Christians and have pictures of Jesus on their walls or crosses on their wall or war crosses, if they behaved like, if half of them had like half of a Christian lifestyle, I would love to live in that country. We would be living in a beautiful, awesome country. Christian values are amazing. Nobody, I don't say nobody, but very, very, very few people even attempt to adhere to them.
Yeah. Because, life gets in the way.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. So do you want to say anything more about Ukraine? Russia
is hitting them. I mean, they've turned them into a landlocked country at this point. I mean, Ukraine's ports are blockaded completely, and Russia has even been going after bridges linking Ukraine to Romania. That bridge is apparently of Soviet design and have stood up to repeated strikes. But it's something to be.
They didn't build them pretty, but they built them strong.
Oh, they built them strong. That bridge has been taking all sorts of hits. And by the way, that's why it's been taking so long, because of the Soviets' assumption of a third world war and building infrastructure in Ukraine to accommodate the fact that they may be fighting a third world war. Ukraine has just been living off of Soviet construction.
Yeah. I love Soviet construction. I mean, I remember the first time I flew like in a Tupolev F-154, which was the work. Ever been on one of those? It's like the workhorse of like the old Aeroflots that go back to like the 50s and 60s. And the one I was on was ancient. It was from 1958 and it had a wooden toilet seat in the bathroom. And it was like totally like, I'm pretty sure, you could have like kind of crash landed it and it would have still been okay.
Still survived. Yeah. They built it to last. They built that stuff to last.
Yeah. They were like, we wanted to, because that's the whole thing, right? They weren't like Boeing trying to sell as many planes as possible. They were just trying to keep planes up in the air as long as possible. It's a whole different economic
That
model.
gets my use value thing. Like, meaning they built it because they were using it, not to make just a profit. Those are different models of building things. Like, your reasoning is different for the item that you're building. Use
I don't
value.
know. I have some weird timer music thing going off right now. I don't know why. Do you hear it?
I do not hear it, but it is 10 o'clock, so I'm
Okay,
assuming
all right.
you can time it because it's 10.
All right, I'll have to figure that out. Anyway, it's the end of the show, so that seems like an appropriate time. Thanks everyone for joining us. Stay tuned for TMI coming up right now, and the Q&A show at 12 noon is coming up at Eastern time. So,
yep, please stick around for TMI and drop a unique chat over there, even if you don't watch the show. We would appreciate it.
All right, thanks guys. Bye.
Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.